Hi guys. So I am going to real quickly give you a little overview of what we have done in chapter 9 so far. So we are talking about finding our x-intercepts. We have gone through 4 methods so far. So the first one that we went through was just graphing. We have our parabola, we graphed it, we found our x-intercepts. That was graphing. Where it crosses the x-axis, those are our solutions. Then after that, we factored. So we had something like this. We said, what are factors of negative 12 that will add to negative 4? Negative 6 and 2. We factored it into this here. And then what x value would make this 0? That's our first solution, which would be 6. What x value would make this 0? That would be negative 2. Then after that, we moved into completing the square. I'm going to tie 2 methods together here because they flow pretty nicely together. So completing the square, what we did was we wanted to make something over here into a perfect square so we could factor it like this. So first thing we did was we added or subtracted whatever the sign was, we did the opposite, to the other side. So here I added 12 to this side. Then to find what I needed to add here, I needed to take half of my b term, so half of negative 4 is negative 2, and square it. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. Whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do to the other. That way you're not changing that equation. Then we just factored this side. So factors of positive 4 that add to negative 4, negative 2, and negative 2. So that factored into x minus 2 squared, and then add these together, so it equals 16. Okay, from there, this ties into our last method. You're just solving for x, you're using the square roots. So once we have something like this, we want to get rid of this square. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. That will cancel that out. When you take the square root of something, it has to be plus or minus. Do you guys remember that? Okay, so what we're left with over here is our x minus 2, and the square root of 16 is 4. So we have plus or minus 4. Last step, I'm going to add my 2 to the other side. I'm always going to write that first, just because it's easier to follow from there. So then you're just going to do 2 plus 4 is 6. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. That gives you your 2 solutions. Alrighty, so the last method, and this is probably the easiest once you get the hang of it, is called the quadratic formula. So I hope you guys found something that looked like this, at least at the top. I kind of put it out step by step here. So this is what we call the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula will work for any quadratic equation. You can always use the quadratic formula. It will always work. Okay, so there are basically 4 steps here. Step 1, you need to get it into standard form. So let's just start working through the problem. We're going to do this here. Okay, the reason I say get it into standard form is because this is not yet. We need to get everything to one side. It has to be in descending order. So I am going to subtract my 4x and subtract 12 to both sides. The reason I'm doing this and not subtracting my x squared is because I don't want my x squared to be negative if it doesn't have to be. So if I subtract 4x and 12 to both sides, I should have x squared minus 4x minus 12, and now that equals 0. Okay, step number 2, we need to identify A, B, and C. I hope we're all really good at that now. We've done it plenty of times. So these are just your coefficients to your x terms, to all your terms. So A is the coefficient to x squared. I could write that with a 1. It's not going to change anything. My coefficient for x squared, which is my A value, is 1. Coefficient to my x value is my b term, include the sign, negative 4. And c is always just your constant, again include the sign, so negative 12. Okay, all we are going to do with this is just plug these numbers in right up here and solve. So x equals negative b. So I have a negative and I'm plugging in b, always use parentheses, negative 4. Okay, plus or minus the square root, again parentheses, negative 4 squared, minus 4 times a is just 1, times c is negative 12. That's all under the square root. All over 2 times a, which is just 1. That doesn't really change anything. I'm still going to write it down just because occasionally you'll have something other than 1 and you don't want to forget about that. Okay, all we're going to do is simplify now. So negative times negative 4 is just positive 4. Plus or minus negative 4 squared, we're including the negative, so it's going to be a positive 16. Then we have negative 4 times 1, which is negative 4, times negative 12. Negative 4 times negative 12 is going to be a positive, and that is 48. 2 times 1 is 2. Okay, we have 4 plus or minus 16 and 48 is 64. And then we can actually simplify our root 64 because 64 is a perfect square. So we have 4 plus or minus 8 all over 2. Okay, this should look familiar now. Ignore the negative, focus on the positive. 4 plus 8 is 12, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. That is one solution. Okay, ignore the positive, we just did that. Focus on your negative. 4 minus 8 is negative 4. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. And there are your solutions. So, what I actually did here was I used the same problem for all of these that we just did. So, for all of these, we should have 6 and negative 2 for our solutions, which we do. All right, if you guys have any questions at all, always reach out. See you next video.